This story is titled, "During my bedroom renovation project, my wife called me foolish in front of our kid for working with my hands rather than hiring workers." Her words cut deep, so I filed divorce papers days later, and she pleaded with me to reconsider. Hey everyone, my name is Marcus, and I'm 38 years old. I've learned that you never really know when your marriage is going to die. Sometimes it's not the big things that kill it, not the affairs or financial disasters, not the dramatic betrayals that you see in movies. Sometimes it's a quiet moment on a Tuesday afternoon while you're balancing on a stepladder with bleach burning your lungs, working on something that should have been fixed properly long ago. I had been working on our bathroom ceiling for 4 hours straight. Our old colonial house had persistent mold problems that seemed to come back no matter what I did. My wife Diana, who's 36, absolutely refused to hire professionals to deal with it properly. "We can't afford it," she'd always say, then turn around and go buy another designer handbag for her real estate showings. So there I was, doing my best to keep our home from literally rotting above our heads. My 14-year-old son Kevin had been sprawled in the hallway with his phone, supposedly doing homework on his school app. I could hear Diana's heels clicking on the hardwood floors downstairs. She had just returned from showing another $1 million listing that she wouldn't end up selling. The sound of those heels always announced her mood, and today they had that sharp, impatient rhythm that meant she was already irritated about something. "Mom!" Kevin called out from the hallway. "Do I really have to finish this chemistry homework? It's Tuesday." The clicking heels immediately started coming up the stairs, and I focused harder on scrubbing another patch of black mold, sweat, and bleach running down my arms. 22 years of construction work had taught me how to handle household repairs, even if Diana thought it made me look common. "Kevin, honey," Diana's voice carried that familiar tone of contempt as she reached the top of the stairs. "If you want to end up like your father, scrubbing other people's houses for a living, then sure, skip your homework." I froze on the ladder, my scrub brush stopping mid-motion. "Look at him up there," she continued, and I could hear the sneer in her voice without even turning around. "That's what happens when you don't apply yourself in school. You end up being the handyman in your own home because you can't afford to hire real professionals." Kevin laughed. That new, cruel laugh he'd been developing lately. "Dad's basically the janitor," he said, and I felt something cold settle in my stomach. The bleach dripped into my eyes, but I didn't wipe it away. Something else was burning now. Something deeper than chemical irritation. What they didn't understand, what they had never bothered to learn, was that those 22 years of construction work had put Kevin through private school. That same work had bought this colonial house that Diana loved to show off to her real estate friends. It had paid for every designer bag, every luxury car lease, every country club membership she used to network with clients. Every callus on my hands represented something I had provided for them, something I had sacrificed to give them a better life. I carefully wiped my hands on my old t-shirt and kept scrubbing. But something fundamental had shifted in that moment. Something that couldn't be undone with apologies or explanations. They say mold can rot a house from the inside out, eating away at the structure until everything collapses. Turns out contempt can do the same thing to a marriage. That night I couldn't sleep. Their laughter kept echoing in my head. Kevin's cruel words. Dad's basically the janitor. 22 years of breaking my back to give them a good life, and I had been reduced to a joke. A punchline they could share while I worked to maintain the home they took for granted. I lay there in the dark, touching the calluses on my hands that had once felt like badges of honor, but now seemed like marks of shame in the eyes of my own family. The next day, I was fixing a leak under the kitchen sink, Wednesday maintenance, the kind of unglamorous work that kept our vintage colonial from falling apart while Diana was out showing houses to people who could actually afford a maintenance staff. Kevin wandered into the kitchen fresh from his video games, that new smirk plastered across his face like he was carrying around some secret joke. "Mom says we're getting the bathroom professionally done next week," he announced, clearly enjoying this moment. You know, by people who actually know what they're doing. Something snapped inside me. I slid out from under the sink, my back protesting after hours of cramped work, water dripping from my clothes onto the kitchen floor. "You think this is funny?" My voice was shaking with an anger I hadn't felt in years. "You think it's beneath you to know how to fix things? To work with your hands and actually contribute something useful to this family?" "Chill, Dad, don't get mad," Kevin said with that infuriating teenage dismissiveness. "Just because you never made anything of yourself doesn't mean you have to take it out on me." "Made anything of myself?" I stood up fully, water still dripping from my work clothes. "Who do you think paid for your precious private school? Your gaming computer? This house? Everything you take for granted? Every weekend I'm here fixing something, maintaining something, making sure you have a good home to live in while you sit there playing games and acting like you're too good for honest work. Kevin backed up, clearly not used to seeing me this angry. The smirk faltered for just a moment. Mom says, "Your mother says a lot of things," I interrupted, "but she's never had to climb into a crawl space at midnight or fix a burst pipe in freezing weather or spend her weekends keeping this house from falling apart around us. A real man isn't afraid of hard work, son. A real man takes care of his family. A real man doesn't scream at his kid," Kevin shot back, then turned and ran out of the kitchen. I knew he was probably already texting Diana, spinning the story to make me look like the villain. Sure enough, within an hour, Diana's Mercedes screeched into the driveway with the kind of aggressive urgency that meant I was about to face the full force of her fury. She burst through the front door, her designer heels clicking like bullets on the hardwood floors I had refinished myself just last summer. The sound echoed through the house with sharp staccato beats that announced her rage before she even opened her mouth. "How dare you!" she screamed, her voice carrying that particular pitch that meant she was beyond reasoning with. "Kevin said you went completely ballistic on him. He told me you called him worthless, said he wasn't a real man, and threatened him just because he mentioned we're getting professional repairs done. That's not what—" I started, but she cut me off with a wave of her manicured hand. "He said you were ranting like a crazy person, threatening him just because he mentioned that we're finally going to get professional work done in this house." Her eyes were blazing with indignation, and I could see Kevin lurking behind her in the doorway, watching the show he had orchestrated. There was a slight smile playing at the corners of his mouth, the satisfied expression of someone who had just pulled off a successful manipulation. He had learned from the best, after all. "Diana, he's twisting what actually happened." I tried again, but she wasn't interested in hearing my side of the story. "Get out!" Her voice turned to ice, cold and final. "Get out of this house right now. I won't have my son terrorized by some manual laborer with an inferiority complex." The words hit me like a physical blow. Manual laborer. Inferiority complex. After 22 years of marriage, this is how she saw me. Not as the man who had worked his ass off to provide for them, but as some kind of embarrassing burden they had to tolerate. "I've given everything to this family," I said quietly, my voice barely controlled. 22 years of my life, my sweat, my time, everything I had to give. "Oh, please," Diana laughed, and it was that same cruel laugh that Kevin had inherited. "You're just the handyman who lives here. We can hire professionals to do what you do and they'll do it better. In fact, get out before I call the police and have you removed for threatening my son." I looked at my son. This boy I had given everything for, who I had taught to ride a bike and helped with homework and taken to countless baseball games. Now he stood there smirking behind his mother, watching me get thrown out of my own home like I was some kind of dangerous stranger. In that moment, I saw what I had allowed them to become, and more importantly, what I had become in their eyes. "Okay," I said simply, wiping my hands on my work jeans one last time. "Okay, but remember this moment, both of you. Remember it very clearly, because you're going to think about it a lot in the coming weeks." As I walked upstairs to pack a bag, I heard Kevin say loudly enough for me to hear, "Good riddance. Now we can get real professionals to fix things around here." Diana's laughter followed me up the stairs. "Finally," she said to Kevin, "I've already got a maintenance company's number. They're actually qualified, unlike some people." What they didn't know, what they couldn't possibly understand, was how much work I really did around that house. They had no idea about the small disasters I prevented on a daily basis, the countless repairs I had made over the years that would have cost them thousands of dollars if they had hired professionals. They were about to learn the hard way that sometimes you don't know what you have until it's gone, and sometimes what you have is worth a lot more than you thought. My friend Derek's couch wasn't particularly comfortable, but it was infinitely better than swallowing my pride and staying where I wasn't wanted. That first night, I told him everything while we shared beers, about the mold situation, their cruel laughter, Kevin's manipulation of the story, and Diana's final dismissal where she called me a manual laborer with an inferiority complex. "Those ungrateful—" Derek couldn't even finish the sentence, he was so angry on my behalf. Then his eyes lit up with a sudden idea, the kind of expression that meant he was about to suggest something either brilliant or terrible. "Hey, remember that crew that worked on my house last year? The ones who seemed so professional at first but totally screwed everything up?" I took another sip of beer, already knowing where this was going. "The ones who charge premium rates but use the cheapest materials they can get away with?" "Exactly." Derek grinned, with the enthusiasm of someone who had just thought of the perfect revenge. "Superior Home Solutions. They have a very impressive website and give a great initial presentation, but everything they touch falls apart within weeks. My bathroom renovation alone cost me thousands of dollars to fix properly after they were done with it. Something stirred in my chest. Not quite revenge, but a sense of justice. Diana had always been a sucker for a good marketing pitch and impressive presentations. She would choose flashy promises over practical experience every single time, especially if it meant proving that she was too sophisticated to rely on my amateur work. Derek was already pulling up their website on his phone, scrolling through their portfolio of gleaming, professional-looking photos. "Look at this," he said, showing me their gallery. All staged photos, of course, but Diana won't know that. And they're absolute masters at upselling unnecessary work and convincing people they need premium upgrades. She'd believe them over me any day, I said bitterly, remembering how she had always dismissed my warnings about the house's specific quirks and needs. She preferred the advice of strangers with business cards over the knowledge I had gained from actually living in and maintaining that house for over 2 decades. "I'll have Lisa call her," Derek suggested, referring to his wife. "You know, woman-to-woman networking. She can rave about their incredible work on our house." Diana's always been a bit jealous of Lisa's place anyway. This would be like getting an insider recommendation from someone she respects. The plan was elegantly simple in its poetic justice. Lisa would casually mention Superior Home Solutions to Diana, praising their reasonable rates and professional approach while making it sound like she was doing Diana a favor by sharing an insider secret. Diana would eat it up. She loved feeling like she was getting exclusive access to something special. "They'll charge her triple what regular contractors would," Derek explained, with the satisfaction of someone who had learned this lesson the expensive way. "They'll promise top-tier work, but use the cheapest materials they can source. And the best part is that everything will look absolutely perfect for about 3 weeks, just long enough for them to get paid and disappear." I thought about Diana's precious colonial house, the one I had maintained so carefully for years, learning all its quirks and specific needs. I knew about the ventilation issues in that bathroom, the way moisture could get trapped behind improper sealing, the specific materials that worked with the house's age and construction. I had spent countless weekends dealing with those exact problems. "The mold will come back worse than before," I said quietly, already picturing what would happen. "They won't know about the ventilation issues in that bathroom, or how that particular corner needs special treatment because of the way the house settles." "Exactly," Derek nodded. "And by then they'll have Diana's money, and their warranty will be conveniently void due to some fine print they buried in the contract. She'll be stuck with work that's worse than when she started, and no recourse to fix it." That night, I lay on Derek's couch, staring at the ceiling and thinking about Diana's smug face when she mentioned getting real professionals. I thought about Kevin's smirk when he talked about hiring people who actually know what they're doing. For 22 years, I had been the one who actually knew what I was doing, but they had never bothered to recognize that. The next morning, Lisa made the call. I could hear Diana's excited voice through the phone even from across the room. She was practically vibrating with enthusiasm at getting this referral from someone she considered successful and sophisticated. Lisa played her part perfectly, laying on the praise thick while maintaining just the right tone of casual helpfulness. "Oh, they're not cheap," Lisa said, playing the role of someone sharing expensive taste. "But you get what you pay for, right? And they're so much more professional than having your ex-husband do it. I mean, these people actually have credentials and insurance and everything." I could practically hear Diana preening through the phone at the thought of hiring an exclusive contractor, someone worthy of her precious house and her refined standards. This was exactly the kind of validation she craved, proof that she was too sophisticated to rely on the amateur work of a mere construction worker. 3 days later, Superior Home Solutions had secured the job. Derek heard through his network that Diana was absolutely thrilled with their initial presentation and their promises of luxury upgrades and premium materials. What she didn't know was that in 3 weeks, those premium materials would start showing their true quality. The mold wouldn't just come back. It would thrive in the improperly sealed spaces they would create. The luxury upgrades would start failing one by one, and she would finally understand the difference between marketing and actual expertise. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about getting even. It's about letting people learn the hard way what they've lost and what they never properly valued in the first place. A week later, I ran into them at Henderson's Market. I was there buying microwave dinners for my temporary stay at Derek's place, the kind of bachelor food that I wasn't particularly proud of but was practical for my current situation. That's when I heard her voice, deliberately loud enough to make sure everyone in the store could hear what she was saying. "Oh, look, Kevin, it's your father," Diana announced with theatrical disgust. "I guess handymen shop in the frozen food section now." Her laughter echoed through the aisle, sharp and designed for maximum humiliation. "How's life without your tool belt, Marcus?" I tried to walk past them with what dignity I could maintain, but Diana stepped directly in front of my shopping cart, her designer purse swinging as she positioned herself to block my path. It was the same purse whose broken strap I had fixed just last month with a careful repair that had saved her from having to replace an expensive accessory. "Superior Home Solutions started work yesterday," she announced, her eyes glittering with malicious satisfaction. $15,000 for the bathroom renovation. Real professionals with real credentials, not just some amateur playing handyman in his spare time. $15,000. I knew that was almost everything she had managed to save up, especially since her commission checks hadn't been coming in like they used to. The real estate market had been tough, and Diana's expensive lifestyle didn't leave much room for major home repairs. "That's a lot of money, Diana," I said quietly, genuinely concerned despite everything. "Are you sure you can afford—" "Don't you dare pretend to care about our finances anymore," she cut me off with venom in her voice. "These people know what they're doing. Their equipment alone costs more than you make in a year. They have certifications, insurance, professional-grade tools, everything a real contractor should have." A small crowd of shoppers had started to gather, drawn by the drama unfolding in the frozen foods aisle. Diana was clearly playing to this audience, every inch the wronged woman standing up to her inferior ex-husband. She was in her element, performing the role of someone who had finally escaped the burden of settling for substandard work. "You'll regret this," I said, my voice shaking with a mixture of anger and genuine concern. "Mark my words, Diana. In a few weeks, you'll be on your knees, begging me to come back and fix what they've done to that house." "In your dreams," she replied with a dismissive laugh that was meant to sting. Kevin stepped forward then, that cruel smirk still plastered across his face like a permanent feature. "You know what my friends call you behind your back, Dad?" he said, clearly savoring this moment of public humiliation. "The plumber. Because you're full of shit and only good for cleaning up other people's messes." The small crowd gasped at the teenager's cruelty toward his own father. Diana beamed with pride at her son's vicious wit, as if he had just delivered the perfect punchline to a joke she had been setting up for years. "You taught him well," I said to Diana, looking directly into her eyes. "But remember something. I was there when the pipes burst at 3:00 in the morning. I was there when the boiler failed in the middle of winter. I was there when the roof leaked during that terrible storm last spring. Where will your precious contractors be when things go wrong at midnight on a weekend? They'll be on speed dial," Diana shot back confidently. "And they'll actually know what they're doing when we call them. I had to refinance the house to afford them, but it's worth every penny to finally have real work done instead of your amateur repairs." My blood ran cold at those words. "You refinanced the Colonial, Diana? That house needs specific—" "Don't you dare pretend you know better than certified professionals," she nearly screamed, her voice rising to a pitch that made other shoppers step back. "I'd rather go into debt than rely on your amateur repairs ever again." Kevin grabbed a frozen dinner from my cart and held it up like evidence in a trial. "Look, Mom, bachelor food. I guess that's all the plumber can afford now that he doesn't have us to support his lazy lifestyle." I looked at my son, this cruel stranger who was wearing my child's face, and then at Diana, who was so desperate to prove me worthless that she had actually refinanced our home of 22 years to pay for contractors she knew nothing about. The weight of what they had done, what they were willing to sacrifice just to avoid admitting I had any value, hit me like a physical blow. 3 weeks, I said quietly, my voice steady despite the rage and heartbreak churning inside me. In 3 weeks, when everything starts falling apart, remember this moment. Remember how much you paid to replace someone who did it for free. Someone who actually cared about that house and cared about both of you. The only thing falling apart was your shoddy workmanship, Diana sneered, her voice dripping with contempt. "Come on, Kevin, let's leave the plumber to his frozen dinners. We have better things to do than waste time with someone who clearly can't handle his own failures." As they walked away, I heard Kevin say loudly enough for the entire store to hear, "I can't believe I used to think he was good at anything. What an embarrassment." Diana's laughter echoed through the store one final time. "Don't worry, honey. Now we have people who actually know what quality work looks like. You'll never have to be ashamed of amateur repairs again." I stood there in the frozen food aisle, holding a microwave dinner that had become a symbol of my supposed failure, while other shoppers awkwardly moved away from the scene. But I wasn't embarrassed. Not anymore. Because I knew something they didn't know. I knew exactly what Superior Home Solutions had done to Derek's house, and I knew exactly how long it would take for Diana's quality work to show its true colors. During those 3 weeks at Derek's place, I had time to really think about everything that had led to this moment. I thought about the way Diana's eyes would linger on her colleague Ryan during office parties, how she had started working late only after he joined the real estate firm. I thought about Kevin, who had gone from being a curious kid who used to follow me around with a toy hammer, asking endless questions about how things worked, to this sneering stranger who called me the plumber, like it was the worst insult he could imagine. Maybe it's better this way, I told Derek one evening as we sat on his back porch with beers. I was just their handyman with benefits, free labor, who helped pay the bills while they looked down on me for doing it. Then came the phone call that I had been expecting. Diana's number flashed on my phone screen exactly 3 weeks to the day after Superior Home Solutions had finished their premium renovation. I let it ring twice before answering, savoring the moment. "I just wanted you to see what real work looks like," Diana said, her voice practically vibrating with satisfaction and smugness. "The bathroom is absolutely gorgeous. Italian tiles, designer fixtures, proper ventilation systems installed by people who actually know what they're doing." I let her ramble on, listening to her recite the list of premium features and technical terms she had probably learned from the contractor's sales pitch. She was so proud of herself, so convinced that she had finally proven my inadequacy by hiring real professionals. "And the mold is completely gone. Not a trace of it anywhere," she continued with obvious delight. "See what happens when you hire actual professionals who know exactly what they're doing? They knew how to handle everything properly, unlike some people who just slap paint over problems and hope for the best." "Mom! Mom!" Kevin's panicked voice suddenly cut through her gloating, sharp with genuine terror. "The ceiling! The bathroom ceiling!" There was a moment of confusion on Diana's end. Rustling sounds, muffled conversation, the sound of footsteps running across hardwood floors. "What are you talking about? I'm on the phone proving to your father that—" Diana's voice stopped abruptly. I could hear it through the phone then, the unmistakable sound of wet plaster hitting ceramic tile. The sound I had been waiting 3 weeks to hear. "Oh my God," Diana whispered, her voice barely audible. The whole ceiling is— Oh my God, Kevin, you're covered in—" I didn't wait to hear the rest. I ended the call, turned off my phone completely, and poured myself a beer. The sense of vindication was almost overwhelming. "It started, didn't it?" Derek asked, seeing the expression on my face. "Yep." I took a long, satisfying sip. "Right on schedule. You going to answer when she calls back?" I thought about Diana's smug voice as she listed off all those fancy features she didn't understand. I thought about Kevin's cruel nickname for me and his public humiliation in the grocery store. I thought about 22 years of fixing things while they complained about how I did it, never recognizing the skill and care that went into maintaining their comfortable lifestyle. "No," I said finally. "Let them call their real professionals. I'm sure they'll be happy to charge emergency rates to come out and assess the damage they created." My phone started buzzing again. Diana's number, then Kevin's, then Diana's again. I turned it off completely and went to bed. For the first time in weeks, I slept soundly, without dreams of mold or cruel laughter or falling plaster. Sometimes the best response isn't answering at all. Sometimes it's just letting go and letting karma do its work. 2 days of complete silence followed. 2 days of letting their increasingly frantic calls go straight to voicemail, while I enjoyed the peace of Derek's couch and the satisfaction of knowing that everything was unfolding exactly as I had predicted. Then came the knock at Derek's front door that I had been half expecting but still wasn't quite prepared for. There stood Diana, and she looked nothing like the polished real estate agent who had mocked me in the supermarket just weeks before. Her pristine white designer suit, the kind she wore to impress high-end clients, was already speckled with raindrops from the storm outside. Her usually perfect makeup was slightly smeared, giving her a desperate, disheveled appearance that was completely at odds with her normal composed facade. Kevin skulked behind her, his typical swagger completely gone. His face showed a mixture of embarrassment and genuine desperation that I had never seen before. The cruel smirk that had become his default expression was nowhere to be found. "Don't even think about letting them in," I called from the living room, loud enough for them to hear through the screen door. I wanted them to know that I was there, that I was choosing not to help them, not simply unavailable. "Please." Diana's voice cracked in a way I hadn't heard since the early days of our marriage when she was still capable of vulnerability. "Superior Home Solutions won't answer our calls. The ceiling is— There's water everywhere, Marcus. The mold is back, but it's worse. It's black and spreading, and it's getting into the bedroom. The whole upstairs smells like— Sounds like a job for real professionals." I couldn't help but let the satisfaction creep into my voice. You know, the ones with the expensive equipment and actual credentials. I'm sure they'll be right over to fix their premium work. Dad, Kevin stepped forward, and for the first time in months, his usual swagger was completely gone. I know I was awful to you, but the bathroom is completely ruined. Mom's bedroom ceiling is starting to stain too, and there are dark spots appearing on the walls. The whole house smells like something died in there. Mold, I finished for him, unable to resist. Funny how that works, isn't it? Almost like someone who lived there for 22 years might have known what he was talking about when he tried to explain how that particular house needed to be maintained. Diana wiped rain from her face, smearing her mascara even further down her cheeks. The woman who had always been so concerned with appearances now looked like she had been crying in the rain for hours. I called 3 other contractors for emergency repairs, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. They all want thousands of dollars just to assess the damage and give us an estimate. The refinancing took everything we had saved. There's nothing left for emergency repairs. That's not my problem anymore, I said, standing up and walking to the door so they could see me clearly through the screen. I'm just the plumber, remember? Only good for cleaning up other people's messes. Kevin visibly flinched when I threw his own cruel words back at him. I didn't mean… Yes, you did, I interrupted. Both of you meant every word, every laugh, every sneer, every moment of mockery when I was working to keep your house from falling apart. You meant all of it, and you enjoyed it. I looked at Diana's ruined white suit, the expensive outfit she was wearing to beg for help from someone she had considered so far beneath her. How much did that outfit cost, Diana? The one you're wearing to ask for help from someone you called a manual laborer with an inferiority complex? $2,000, she whispered, a fresh drop of rain sliding down her nose. Funny, I said, shaking my head. That's about what proper ventilation and moisture barriers would have cost 8 months ago when I first tried to explain to you what that bathroom really needed. If you had listened to me then, instead of dismissing my advice as amateur nonsense. Marcus, please. Diana's voice was barely audible now. I know we were wrong. I know we treated you terribly, and I know we didn't appreciate what you did for us. But the house, our beautiful house, is falling apart. Kevin stepped up beside his mother, and I could see genuine fear in his eyes now. Dad, you always knew exactly what to do. These guys just covered everything up with fancy tiles and expensive paint, but you actually understood how to fix things permanently. You knew how that house worked. I let out a genuine, hearty laugh that felt like the first honest emotion I had expressed in months. Now that's ironic coming from you, Kevin. Dad actually fixed things. Wasn't I just the embarrassing amateur handyman last week? The father you had to explain to your friends because he was so beneath your standards? A car drove by just then, hitting a puddle and splashing even more water onto Diana's expensive white suit. She didn't even flinch or try to move out of the way. She just stood there, soaking wet and defeated, waiting for my response. We'll pay you, she said desperately, her voice breaking. Whatever you want, whatever it costs. Just please come look at what's happening to the house. Like you paid Superior Home Solutions all $15,000? I asked, my voice cold with the memory of her bragging about the cost. Oh wait, you can't pay me like that because you refinanced the house to prove how much better they were than me. You bet everything on proving I was worthless. Thunder rumbled ominously in the distance, and I could see that more rain was coming. The storm that was soaking them outside seemed fitting for this moment. A perfect metaphor for the chaos they had brought into their own lives. The bathroom's completely destroyed, Kevin said quietly, his voice lacking any of the arrogance that had defined his attitude toward me for months. Everything they did, it's all falling apart piece by piece. And the smell. Mom can't even show houses anymore because all her clothes smell like mold no matter how many times she washes them. Well, I said, with a smile that I knew looked cruel but felt entirely justified, I guess that's what happens when you hire real professionals with actual credentials. Good luck with that emergency repair situation. I turned to Derek, who had been watching this entire exchange with barely concealed amusement. Derek, would you mind closing the door? There's a draft coming in, and I don't want to catch cold. Marcus, wait! Diana reached for the door handle, desperation making her voice crack. Please, just listen for 1 minute. No, my voice was final, cutting through her pleading like a blade. You wanted professionals, so call them. You wanted someone worthy of your precious house, so find them. You wanted me gone, and congratulations. You got exactly what you wanted, every single thing you asked for. The last thing I saw as Derek slowly closed the door was Diana's mascara-streaked face and Kevin's completely devastated expression. Through the window, I watched them stand there for a long moment in the pouring rain, two people who had finally realized the true cost of their cruelty. They looked small and defeated, nothing like the confident duo who had mocked me in the grocery store. Finally, they turned and slowly walked back to Diana's Mercedes, their expensive clothes completely soaked and their pride in ruins. I watched them drive away, and for the first time in weeks, I felt something that might have been peace. Harsh, Derek said, but he was smiling as he said it. Sometimes, I replied, settling back into the couch that had become my temporary refuge. People need to learn the hard way what quality work really looks like. And sometimes they need to learn what happens when you throw away something valuable just because you don't understand its worth. Life has a funny way of coming full circle, and sometimes justice arrives in the most unexpected packages. 8 months after the bathroom disaster that had destroyed Diana's precious colonial house, Derek and I decided to start our own business. We called it Quality First Home Services, and it turned out there were plenty of people in our area who were willing to pay good money for honest work done right the first time. Word spread quickly about our reputation for saving old houses that other contractors had either given up on or botched with quick fixes and cheap materials. We specialized in the kind of thorough, careful work that lasts for decades, rather than just looking good for a few weeks. Our client base grew through referrals from satisfied customers who appreciated the difference between real craftsmanship and flashy marketing. I heard through mutual friends that Diana had started dating Ryan from her office, the same colleague she had always stayed late with, the one whose presence had made those office parties so awkward in the final years of our marriage. He had moved into the colonial house after our rushed divorce was finalized, bringing with him his own brand of handyman skills that he was eager to demonstrate. That's when the text messages from Kevin started, and they completely caught me off guard. "Dad, he's doing it all wrong," was the first message that appeared on my phone one Tuesday evening. "He's using the wrong sealant on the bathroom tiles just like those contractors did. I remember how you always said this house needs special materials because of its age and the way it settles." I stared at my phone, surprised by the technical detail in Kevin's observation. A second text followed almost immediately. "I've been watching renovation videos online, trying to understand what you used to do around the house. Everything you fixed lasted for years. Everything they do falls apart in weeks." Diana had apparently married Ryan quickly, hoping that his willingness to tackle home repairs would finally solve her crumbling house problems. But Kevin kept texting me about Ryan's mistakes, using the wrong grout that would crack within months, ignoring the ventilation issues that I had spent years managing, painting over mold instead of properly treating the underlying moisture problems. "Can I come watch you work sometime?" Kevin's message was the one that really caught me off guard. Like I used to when I was little, before I became such a jerk about everything. I want to learn how to do things the right way. I found Kevin waiting outside one of our job sites the next day, looking nothing like the arrogant teenager who had publicly humiliated me in that grocery store. Gone were the designer clothes and the perpetual smirk. Instead, he was wearing old jeans and work boots, his phone nowhere in sight. He looked nervous but determined, like someone preparing to make amends for something terrible. "I was wrong," he said simply, without any of the dramatic explanations or excuses I might have expected. "About everything. About you. About what it means to be good at something, about what real skill looks like." There was something different in his voice, a maturity that hadn't been there before, a genuine humility that replaced the cruel arrogance he had developed during those final months at home. He wasn't just apologizing, he was acknowledging that he had fundamentally misunderstood what he was looking at when he watched me work. He started coming by after school, learning the proper way to repair and maintain things. Not the quick fixes and cosmetic solutions that Ryan favored, but the thorough, lasting work that I had always believed in. Derek, impressed by Kevin's genuine interest and work ethic, even started paying him for weekend help. The kid who had once called me the plumber was now eager to learn every aspect of the trade. Diana wasn't happy about this development, to put it mildly. She tried to forbid Kevin from working with me, claiming that I was trying to turn him into a manual laborer instead of encouraging him to pursue a proper career. But Kevin stood his ground in a way that surprised me. "Mom," he told her with a confidence that reminded me of the curious kid he used to be, "Dad's company made more money last month than our house is worth right now. He's not just a laborer, he's an expert, a craftsman, and I want to learn from him while I still can." The transformation in Kevin was remarkable. He absorbed everything I taught him about proper ventilation, about the importance of using the right materials for each specific job, about taking pride in doing things correctly rather than just making them look good temporarily. He learned to recognize the difference between work that would last and work that would fail, and he started to understand why I had always been so particular about certain details that Diana had dismissed as perfectionism. Sometimes Kevin would mention how the colonial house was slowly deteriorating under Ryan's well-intentioned but misguided care. But he didn't mock or gloat anymore. Instead, he understood. He could see the difference between someone who knew what they were doing and someone who was just trying to look competent. The last time I saw Diana, she was attempting to convince me to fix the colonial's ongoing problems, claiming it was for Kevin's sake since he still had to live there. She hadn't changed much, still looking down on the actual work while desperately needing it done, still trying to manipulate the situation to avoid taking responsibility for her choices. "Ask your husband," I said simply, without anger or bitterness. "I'm sure Ryan knows what he's doing. After all, that's why you married him, isn't it?" But Kevin, he was learning something new every day. He was discovering the satisfaction that comes from understanding how things actually work, from being able to fix problems instead of just covering them up. He learned about the patience required for quality work, about the attention to detail that separates lasting repairs from temporary solutions. Last week, Kevin helped me complete a particularly challenging renovation project, an old Victorian house with similar issues to the colonial he had grown up in. As we stood back admiring our work, seeing how every joint was perfectly sealed and every surface properly treated, he said something that made all the past pain and humiliation feel worthwhile. "Thanks, Dad," he said, wiping sweat from his forehead with the back of his work glove. "Not just for teaching me about home repair and construction. Thanks for teaching me what real quality looks like, both in work and in character. I understand now what we lost when we drove you away." Diana may never understand the true value of what she threw away in her desperate attempt to prove that she was too sophisticated for my kind of work. She may never recognize that the skills she mocked were actually expertise earned through decades of experience and genuine care for the craft. But Kevin does understand now, and in the end, that redemption is worth more than any revenge I could have planned. Watching my son learn to respect honest work, seeing him develop the same standards for quality and integrity that I tried to instill in him years ago, that's a victory that goes far deeper than just proving I was right about those contractors.